Consider what happens to a person who has nothing to care for. No project, no creature, no patch of ground, no one who needs them. They may have comfort, even luxury, and still something in them slowly goes gray. Now consider what happens when that same person is handed something small and living that will die without their attention, something that responds to care and punishes neglect. There is an old and quietly radical idea that healing does not always come from being cared for, but sometimes from being needed by something else. A beloved novel written more than a century ago is built entirely on that idea. That novel is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, a book that has never left print and remains one of the most cherished stories of childhood ever written. It follows a sour, neglected girl sent to live in a vast, gloomy house on the moors, who discovers a walled garden that has been locked and abandoned for years, and who slowly brings it and herself back to life. Beneath its gentle surface lies a remarkable exploration of neglect, healing, and the transformative power of caring for something outside yourself. From the start, the book studies what emotional neglect does to a child. The main character begins the story unpleasant, demanding, and hard to like, and the author is careful to show exactly why. She was never held, never played with, never spoken to with warmth. She was fed and clothed and otherwise ignored. The story explores how a child raised without affection does not become sad in an appealing way. She becomes difficult because difficulty is the only language available to her. It invites a gentler reading of the unpleasant people in the world. Have you ever considered that someone's disagreeable surface might be the exact shape of what they were never given? The novel also explores the healing power of physical work and the outdoors. As the girl begins to dig, weed, plant, and tend, something changes in her that no amount of comfort had managed. Her appetite returns, her temper softens, her body strengthens, and her mind follows. The author renders this transformation slowly and physically, refusing to make it a matter of attitude or willpower. The story explores how the body and the spirit are not separate projects, and how movement, air, and effort can reach a person that words cannot. It invites you to notice how your own state of mind shifts when you have been outside, moving, with your hands in something real. A central concern of the book is the difference between being cared for and having something to care for. The girl is surrounded by servants who feed her and dress her, and she remains miserable. It is only when she is given a hidden, dying garden that needs her that she begins to come alive. The author suggests that the human spirit is not restored primarily by receiving, but by having a purpose that depends on you. The story explores how being needed can accomplish what being served never will. It raises a question worth sitting with. What in your life would notice if you stopped showing up for it, and what does that responsibility give back to you? The novel also examines how one recovering person can pull another out of the dark. The girl eventually discovers a boy in the house who has been treated as fragile and dying, kept in a shuttered room, convinced by everyone around him that he is doomed. She does not pity him. She argues with him, challenges him, and eventually drags him outside into the garden. The author shows that what heals him is not gentleness, but expectation, being treated as capable rather than breakable. The story explores how believing in someone's strength can be more healing than protecting their weakness. It invites you to consider whether the people around you are treated as fragile or as capable, and what that treatment produces. The walled garden itself is one of literature's richest symbols. It is locked, buried, presumed dead, and yet its roots are alive under the soil the entire time, waiting only for someone to clear away what has been choking them. The author uses this to suggest that what looks lifeless in a person is often only dormant. The story explores the difference between dead and neglected, and how much of what seems finished is simply untended. It invites you to consider what in your own life might not be gone at all, only waiting for attention. The novel also studies grief and the way an entire household can be frozen by one person's unhealed sorrow. The garden was locked because of a loss, and the master of the house has spent years traveling to avoid the place where his grief lives. The author shows how one person's refusal to face their pain can cast a shadow over every room and every child in that house. The story explores how unprocessed grief does not stay contained in the one grieving. It invites you to reflect on how the sorrows the adults around you never faced may have shaped the atmosphere you grew up in. There is also a quiet meditation on secrecy as a protective space. The children keep the garden hidden, and that secrecy is essential because it gives them a place that belongs entirely to them, free from adult management, expectation, and interference. The author suggests that people, especially young ones, need a corner of life that no one is supervising. The story explores how a private space allows a person to become someone new before they are ready to be seen. It invites you to consider where in your own life you have room to grow without being watched. The novel also examines the relationship between expectation and outcome. The boy has been told he is dying for his entire life, and he behaves accordingly. When he is told he is strong and treated as though he will stand, he begins to stand. The author explores how deeply a person absorbs the story that others tell about them, and how a changed story can change a body. The story examines the power of what a person is told they are. It raises a question worth holding. What have you been told about yourself for so long that you have simply accepted it as fact? There is also a warm portrait of an ordinary boy from the moors who is entirely at home in the world, comfortable with animals, unbothered by status, and fluent in the language of growing things. The author sets his easy well-being against the misery of the wealthy household to explore where genuine health actually comes from. The story suggests that being at home in your own life has nothing to do with what you own. It invites you to consider who in your own experience seems most at ease in themselves, and what they have that has nothing to do with circumstance. The emotional arc of the book moves from sourness and isolation through curiosity into genuine joy, and the transformation is earned rather than declared. The children do not become happy because someone tells them to. They become happy because they worked, planted, waited, and watched something grow because of them. The author suggests that joy is often a byproduct of care rather than a goal to be pursued directly. The story explores how tending something can quietly rebuild the tender. It invites you to reflect on what you have grown, made, or nurtured, and what it gave back to you. The book's deepest suggestion may be that people, like gardens, do not need to be fixed so much as tended. No one performs an intervention on the girl. She is simply given air, work, a friend, and something that needs her, and the rest follows. The author offers this as a quiet model of how a person comes back to life. It invites you to consider what your own life might need less of and what patient tending it might be waiting for. The novel also gives lovely attention to the role of the seasons in the story's emotional rhythm. The garden begins in winter, apparently barren, and the children must work through cold and doubt with no visible reward for a long time before the first green shoots appear. The author uses this natural timing to explore how healing follows its own pace and cannot be hurried by wishing. The story examines the discipline of continuing to tend something during the season when nothing seems to be happening. It invites you to consider the areas of your own life where you have been working faithfully without yet seeing anything come up, and what it takes to keep going through that particular kind of winter. There is also a quiet study of animals as teachers of trust throughout the book. A robin, in particular, becomes the girl's first real friendship, approaching her slowly, testing her, requiring patience and stillness rather than force. The author uses this to explore how trust is built by consistency rather than by effort, how a wary creature or a wary person comes closer only when it stops being pursued. The story examines the delicate work of earning the confidence of something that has good reason to be careful. It invites you to reflect on the people in your life who need patience rather than pressure, and what it would mean to simply be steady enough for them to approach. In the end, The Secret Garden leaves you with a hopeful and practical vision of healing. It suggests that neglect shapes a person's difficult surface, that having something to care for can restore what comfort cannot, and that what looks dead in a life is often only dormant beneath the soil. A story that reminds you how much is still alive underground offers a quiet and lasting encouragement. Books aren't just stories, they're mirrors that help us understand ourselves better. Comment below with the book you would like explored next and the thing you tend that quietly tends you back. If this kind of gentle book analysis speaks to you, consider liking and subscribing so more of it can find its way to you. This video uses AI-generated audio and visuals for educational purposes only. This is just one reader's personal thoughts and interpretations.